All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, January 23rd of 2023. I hope all of you who played NFL DFS this weekend had a good weekend. Saw some users with some pretty good scores over the weekend. Had a lot of fun playing myself. These playoff environments make DFS all that much more fun. Looking ahead to today, we got a 7-game NBA slate as well as a 4-game hockey slate. Should be plenty to talk about on here as usual. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions that come in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not a member of our Discord, there's a link in the description below to get joined up. Highly recommend it. As always, can ask questions and get feedback from members of the community. A lot of sharp people in the community can have fun sweating together and rooting for some of the same plays, see what other people are doing, what their thoughts are. So always recommend getting in the Discord and joining the community. If you are just tuning in for the first time and not joined up with SaberSim, there is also a link to a 7-day, no strings attached free trial. Join us, check us out, get your questions answered here on this show, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. We take questions live in the YouTube chat as well. We'll get to all the questions both in the office hours channel and the live YouTube chat before the end of the show. Promise you guys that, as always. Gonna get SaberSim pulled up here. Not a lot of questions to get us started today. So if anybody's tuning in, have a thought on their mind, now is a great time to get that in the queue as always. Gonna start with this kind of feature request type of question from Lanny here. Lanny said, this may or may not have been asked and answered previously. If I have 150 entries in a tournament and turn on a game on TV, I could see the ownership of the field on individual players by clicking on them on my phone, of course, but is there an easy way to see my own ownership aside from writing them all down or running to the computer to check? Couple things here. We do have a mobile app, not like a app from the App Store, but SaberSim is available on, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, whatever browser you have available to you on your mobile phone. So you can just log in to your account from there and easily go to the entry editor, see what your exposures are, and then just toggle back and forth between, apps. If you're looking for like a full, breakdown of ownership, you would probably have to wait for the contest to start, wait for probably all of the games to start. Depends, what type of contest you're doing. And then you could see the ownership after a set of game locks for the players that are no longer editable. And then you could like do an Excel formula to get that ownership into like a CSV that you create using something you download from SaberSim. Pretty tedious. Doesn't sound like that's what you're looking for. I would just use the mobile browser and toggle back and forth to see what some of your ownerships are. That's what I tend to do when I'm out and about. But good question there, Lanny. Also saw a question earlier today come in the NBA channel. I saw Ben from SaberSim, one of the devs here, was answering some questions from Kentucky Nick here. Gonna get this question in the chat and give some of my own thoughts on it. So Kentucky Nick said, if I have 2 20 max, 1 3 max, and 1 single entry, should I run one sim at 44 lineups or separate sims? And what about if I do a 150 max with 3 maxes and single entries? I'm going to give the answer that Ben gave and then note some of my own thoughts here. So Ben said, personally, I'd run it together because I prefer simplicity and speed when it comes to NBA, but each person has their own process. If I have time, sometimes I will use the same pool and save my 3 max single entry lineups in a separate set of lineups. And then Ben suggested posting this in office hours. Yeah, so this is a good question, right? I think, our standard advice is to follow the DFS profit plan. If you're not familiar with the profit plan, you can find it over on our YouTube channel. We talk about it a lot here on the show. It is a contest selection framework based on lots of back testing, and we did a whole behind the sims series on it. So you can find it on our YouTube channel here. Start winning more with our DFS profit plan. If you're interested into, some of the theory and the thought that led to that profit plan being born, you can go to our behind the sims series and then scroll down here. I believe it was the first one we did, this behind the sims contest selection series with specifically Eric heading that, Jordan translating the conclusions into plain English. He is very good at that, and giving the people something to work with there. But that was a great series. If you're interested in DFS theory and back testing, I would definitely check that out. But Frank, my man Frank said, great video. Thanks, Andrew. Happy to let you guys know about that one there. But getting back to this, right? I think that Ben's advice makes sense, especially for something like NBA, because starting lineups can come out less than 10 minutes to lock. In the worst cases, they come out after lock. Basketball is really weird where the game might lock at 4 p.m. and then they're not actually going to tip off for another 10 minutes, right? As opposed to something like MLB or NFL where they are kicking off or first pitch is fairly close to the exact start time, right? So in NBA, I can see it making sense to run all of the lineups together if you are in a time crunch, right? I think if you're not in a time crunch, I would follow the advice of splitting your unique lineups into diversifiers and elevators, which is based on the profit plan. Essentially putting your 20 maxes and 150 maxes in one bucket here where the sliders are really close, and then putting your single entries and 3 maxes in a different bucket where those contests tend to have less unique entrants, and the slider settings are a lot closer from single entry and 3 max at 1 to 10,000 as opposed to like 150 max at 10 to 50K or even sometimes above 50K, especially if you're like playing on FanDuel, playing the nickel 150 max contest, right? So, best practice, split it up. If you're in a time crunch, I think it's totally okay to run it all together. Or if you're not that concerned about it, right, and you're like, running 2 builds is just kind of too tedious for me, I would prefer to just have one build where I could do, one late swap and make my life easier make my life easier post lock. Like that is a life EV decision, for the user. And I think that, you're not going to give up too much EV, right? By using the higher slider settings, those lineups that you get in your single entries and 3 max might be a little more volatile, might be a little riskier than what you really need to take down the contest, but doesn't mean that those lineups aren't positive EV at the end of the day. So, when people say, hey, I have a 3 max and a 20 max, what slider setting should I use? I always tell people lean on the higher side. The scores that what might be 10th place in a 150 max is probably good enough to be first place in a single entry on like a point comparison, comparison. So that's why I tell people to lean on the higher side of the slider settings. But no right or wrong answer there. I think we're talking about, marginal EV decisions there. And, if anybody has any thoughts, happy to hear some of those and we can go back and forth on it a little bit. See, our viewers are starting to tick up here for everybody tuning in. Welcome. Not a lot of questions to get us started today. So if anybody has anything that they want to ask ahead of the week, ahead of 2-game NFL slate, ahead of golf, ahead of NBA or NHL tonight, now is a great time to get those questions in and we can talk about it a little more. But gonna try and find something to talk about, give everybody a little bit to tune in and ask some questions here. So I think that those were our last 2 questions in the Discord. Wanted to touch on those, and I'm gonna hop over here to NBA, and maybe we can just do like a little slate breakdown, right? Let's talk about NBA. Let's talk about what the night looks like. So going to get my screen pulled up so we could toggle back and forth here between some of these NBA DFS websites that I like to use, that we highlight in the research video. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Jordan and I did an NBA research video about a week or week and a half ago by now, 11 days actually. Upgrade your NBA DFS process with this NBA strategy. We use all free to use websites. Nothing that we display in that video is behind a paywall. It is all readily available for anybody looking to do some additional research into NBA and try and get an edge or find a value spot that might not be so noticeable. So looking ahead here, nothing particularly crazy in my opinion today. I saw this Rui Hachimura trade and Kendrick Nunn. I think it was like Kendrick Nunn plus like 3 second-round picks for Hachimura. So that is kind of interesting there. We'll see if that helps the Lakers at all. But probably some people I'm keeping my eye on. Robert Williams, that should be out before lock. Looks like Giannis is back. I know he missed quite a few games last week. Not sure if he played over the weekend or not. Rudy Gobert has like consistently been questionable with a groin injury, and Naz Reid has seemed to not have been that smash value play that he was, a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or so. So it will be interesting to see if Gobert plays here. Taurean Prince was playing a lot of minutes off of the bench with Austin Rivers out. Not sure if Rivers is in. We can check that here. Okongwu, I know that Clint Capella was back and was on a minutes limit. Not sure if what the issue is with Capella here. LaMelo Ball, these are just some of the names that I'm really looking at to keep my eye on as news breaks throughout the day. And then also I will uncheck this box up here to see who is actually out, right? Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon being out. That's a big deal, right? Who's going to run point? Derek White or Peyton Pritchard, right? So the point guard situation here for Boston should be pretty interesting. What else do we got? Kevin Porter's still out, been out since like Friday, I think. And it looks like Sabonis is probably back now. So yeah, so those are the big things I'm looking at. And things that I want to keep my eye on specifically there. But seeing a couple questions rolling in here. That was our injury report, first look, things to keep your eye on as news breaks throughout the day. I think this is fun. We don't really want to make this like a pick show or me telling you guys how to play or who to play. We talk a lot about teaching a man to fish, feed him for the rest of his life, feed a man a fish, feed him for a day. Really just trying to talk about DFS theory in general, not who to play, not my own thoughts, right? So I think this injury report kind of breakdown is nice. It's like who to look out for, where are the guys out, and then can run some research builds, test builds, and make some further conclusions from there. But I kind of get a kick out of doing this every day. But that being said, seeing some questions roll in here, gonna get SaberSim pulled back up and start to answer some of these. So see one here from Patrick, and then one in Discord from Neil. We'll get to all of them. Patrick said, what's your thought process that goes into a large NBA slate, like 6+ games for single entry and 3 maxes? Tell Reed and Biyombo to stop fouling so early. Yeah, especially Reed, right? I think he had like 3 fouls. It was like just the start of the second quarter. Guy comes back in, foul, third quarter starts, another foul, like 4 fouls, played really bad there. But those games happen, right? What are my thoughts on like a big slate for some of these things, right? I think this is a good question. I would say that, as the slates get larger, like probably bigger than 6 games, I am more interested in sorting my lineups like specifically based on upside here. So this is just something I was testing earlier. I'm gonna use this build as an example here. So like, let's say I have 150 lineups, I have 5,000 lineup pool. As the slate gets bigger, I'm not really so interested in optimizing for correlation or ownership fade or those type of things. The slate is so big. There are so many lineups that a person can build, not really worried about being unique or not. I never see people do at the top of these huge contests, right? So one thing that I'm experimenting with is using a percentile, either like 95th or 99th, depending on the size of the slate. As the slate gets bigger, I'm more interested in just optimizing for upside. I think as the slate gets smaller and, there are less options, there are less players in the player pool. I think as the slate gets smaller, you need to consider some more of those game theory aspects like correlation and ownership fade, right? So that is when I am more inclined to use SaberScore, but it's not just for single entries or 3 maxes. I'm also using a percentile in these large slates for my diversifier contests as well. But I would say even in single entry and 3 max, more than my 150 maxes, that I think percentiles make a lot of sense on bigger slates where you only have, 1 to 3 entries into the contest. So that's something that I've been experimenting with, been thinking about. I think it makes a lot of sense, but if anybody has, any counterpoints, happy to hear those as well. But as far as, large slate versus small slate, that is something that I have personally been experimenting with, and I've been fairly happy with the results there. But good question, Patrick. All right. Question here from Neil. Let's see what Neil says. Any thoughts on whether the NHL Mini Max is worth max entering or even entering at all? It's $500 to first and $100. So super top heavy and only like 5K entrance. I know for MLB, the suggestion was that the 50-cent Mini Max was a good contest, but the $1 Mini Max was usually worth avoiding. Let me see here. You know what? I don't know where my cell phone is. I was going to check the lobby here. I'm just going to pull up DraftKings on the desktop here. I really don't know. Usually I'm somebody who just enters contests from my phone. I find it much easier to just reserve and enter from that way. But I'm going to pull up the DraftKings lobby on my side right here. And what we are talking about is this 50-cent 150 max, $75 to max enter, about 5K total entrance. And then if I'm to look at the prize pool here, 500 to first, which is about 23% of the 23% of the prize pool. And then like Neil said, a big drop off, 100 to second, and then descending from there. I'm not a huge fan of this payout structure, to be honest. I would say it really comes down to, how much bankroll do you have available to play and where are those dollars best spent, right? I think that if you are somebody where, if you were to put $75 into this 50-cent 150 max, and then that were to limit your availability to play some of the other best contests in quotation marks under the $3 threshold, I would avoid it, right? The way I kind of like to think about it is, play the best contests under the $3 threshold. That is best prize structure, not super top heavy, but still like a good, I don't know how to explain, the best, right? I think a better example is like the $1.20 max in the NHL lobby, like the hip check. That seems like a pretty good contest, right? $1 entry, 20 max entrance. Prize pool is 6K to first, with first place being $600, which is 10% to first, as opposed to the 23% to first in the 50-cent 150 max, right? I think the hip check is like a much better contest and one that I would be much more willing to play. Looks like Neil is here in the chat. The contests in NHL are so bad. And then some comments about MMA, which we could talk about as well. But yeah, so getting back to my point, if entering that 50-cent 150 max stops you from playing other good contests where the percentage of prize to first is lower and the payout structure is flatter, I would avoid it. If you have already entered all of those better contests and now you're deciding, hey, should I play this 50-cent 150 max, or should I start to play contests above the $3 threshold? I would consider two things. I would, one, consider, are you do you only want to play the main slate, or do you want to try and play some of the turbos and night slates, right? Those slates tend to have like some good contests underneath the threshold as well. Instead of like thinking about going up and down, the main slate lobby, start to check out some of those other slates, the night slates, the turbos, the showdowns, right? You could find some good contests in those. And then, if you're like, you know what, no, or, let's say you go and play them, you get all of those good contests under the $3 threshold, and then you still have more money to play, now it's like, okay, if you maxed all of those other things and you still have more money to play, now enter the 50 cent 150 max before going and entering, I don't know, what's a bigger contest here, like the $5 poke check, or the or anything above like the $5 threshold, right? Looks like there's a $4 20 max with 2K to first, right? The forecheck, it is $4 and the prize pool is underneath the 25K threshold. So that's another one that sharks can enter. If anybody is unaware, it's under $5 where the prize pool is less than 25K, or anything under $3, right? So I would be trying to get all of the action in those contests first before coming back to the 50 cent. But if my options are the 50 cent 150 or moving up to above $5, I would play the 50 cent 150. But those are my thoughts. If anyone is confused by all the numbers being thrown around, just let me know, and apologize to you guys about that one. But couple comments here from Neil. I want to touch on this. I know Patrick is a big MMA guy as well. Neil said, I'm hoping DK gets rid of late swap so I can jump into MMA. I know Patrick usually comes on the show, asks if we have late swap for MMA. I saw that they had, another incident with late swap in MMA this weekend. I think that it happened either I heard it happen 3 times, or it happened for 3 fights where like they would unlock and lock a fight again, and we're discounting people's entries. It continues to be like a really bad experience. I saw that the number of 150 maxers was dropping. Alhambro on Twitter did like a little breakdown into the number of 150 maxers back in November on a November MMA slate compared to now, and that number has dropped off. I saw that the main GPP, the big $20 overlaid quite a bit. So DraftKings is going to have to figure out something to do there. We are still not supporting late swap MMA at the moment, just because frankly, the experience with it from what we've seen has been so bad, and they've been doing a really poor job with all of the start times and stuff. But if you're somebody who's playing MMA, I would recommend, focusing on the single entries and 3 maxes. That way you could do hand swaps when available. I also saw that Blender HD posted something on Twitter where, they unlock. Apparently what happens is when they lock the fights, and then if they unlock them and you make a swap where you're not supposed to, they will cancel your entry and just refund it. So people are exploiting that, where if they have a losing fighter in their lineup, they are swapping intentionally to get that refund because they figure that their lineup is probably dead anyways. But that's just another reason why it's not working, right? I mean, that is clearly like exploitative, and I'm sure DraftKings will catch on and figure out something along those lines there. But yeah, not good in the MMA late swap streets from what I've heard. So be careful if you are out there. All right. Let's see. Neil said, basically just looking a replacement sport to hold me over until MLB starts. LOL. I can't handle the late swap in NBA. Way too negative when it comes to life EV for me. Yeah, we hear this a lot, right? For anybody who feels the same way, similar to what we talked about with hockey, right? Explore some of these, turbo slates where there's no late swap. The night slates, there might be a swap at this 7:30. So maybe you don't play the night. Maybe you just play the turbo. Maybe you play some of these showdowns. There are still like, $1 20 maxes in here, quarter jukeboxes. There are still some good contests. I would recommend checking that out in the meantime there. Let's see here. Neil said good call. Or Patrick also for $5 more, just play the hip check. Yeah, that's that $4 one. That was really good contest. I did prefer the hip check, especially with the prize pool being under 25K. Christian said, how would your process change for a 2-game night slate? Good question. I would say, if you are playing a night slate like this one, right, where you're just playing the 2 late games, you're not really thinking so much about, late swap flexibility or late swap edge. I would say just play I'm not looking to be as exploitative. I'm probably more worrying about, like, how do I say it? Roster construction and getting my getting to like some lower owned pieces, right? If it's a 2-game slate, then the risk of duplication goes up significantly. If you guys are on the pro plan, we released a pro exclusive video with Scott this week. Scott talked a lot about ownership and roster construction and basically like playing the best plays. It was definitely something to chew on, some food for thought. One of the big perks of being on the pro plan is some of that pro exclusive content, and Scott did a really good job with that video. Got me thinking a lot about ownership on smaller slates. I actually kind of applied some of those thoughts to the NFL 2-game Sunday slate on FanDuel, and played some of the best plays there without overthinking some of the ownership aspects. So shout out to Scott bringing some good thoughts to the table there. I would say, try something different, right? I think one of the big, too long didn't reads of Scott's video was that, let the field outthink themselves, play the best plays, and then see if you are actually duped, right? We worry about duplication in some of these smaller slates. And the thought was like, play the best plays, find out if you are actually being duped before trying to avoid duplication. And I thought that was a pretty good concept there. So it's definitely something I would like think about when playing a 2-game night NBA slate there. But was a lot more to that video. That is just one aspect of it that I found really interesting. All right. Yeah, no, Neil saw the same thing I did with MMA. I won't play MMA until they get rid of late swap. I didn't play the slate, but I think they locked the wrong fights and chaos like that. Let's see. Patrick said nailing the key bench players in a 2-game slate. Christian, yeah, I think it's like really hard to know who the key players are going to be. I think that a better way of kind of trying to implement this is being a little looser with your player pool and not having such a constricted filter, right? We have since turned off filters for all sports across, SaberSim. Just so you guys know, we found that Sim Diversity is doing a really good job of handling player pool curation, and we don't want to give anybody like a threshold that is basically not necessary. So I would say that if you are somebody who like uses a min projection filter regularly, I would probably turn that off for especially like a short slate like this, and just be mindful of like, are you getting enough exposure of the low-owned guys? Are you getting too much exposure of the low-owned guys? Where's that threshold really for you? Like for me, there's a big drop off from the 7.95 to this 3.09 threshold here. I would probably be comfortable not playing anybody below 4 projected points here. But that's like for you to decide and for you to work in these players at the rate that you are comfortable with, right? So maybe like run a build with no min projection filter on, see how much of these lower plays you're getting, and then kind of manage from there. I think that's kind of what Patrick is getting at, is like, don't, what you shouldn't be doing is like coming in here and saying, I think Metu is going to be the guy and I'm going to use Metu in a big chunk of my lineups. Like that's not really what you should be going for. You should be looking to diversify and get some exposure to kind of a range of players, right? That's what the min uniques does. The higher min uniques is, the more those lineup sets are going to need to be diversified, and you will organically get more exposure to a wider array of players. So I would use min uniques, especially on this 2-game slate, and see what type of lineups you're getting from there. All right. Adam said, just listening in, haven't played MMA once since they put in late swap. They're alienating their best customers and losing us. Yeah, I mean, it's been really bad. And, we just don't think like as a company that, supporting late swap is a good investment time wise for just how bad it's been. So really just keeping our ear to the ground, waiting for some word as to what the future looks like, and we'll adjust from there. Neil said, DK just needs to admit they screwed up and give up the late swap. They are just going to continue to bleed money until they fix it. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Losing a player or like a fight being canceled for like a regular, casual player, like really sucks. They tried to do something to fix it. I don't think this was the right solution. We'll see if, they come up with something different and try a different method. All right. Patrick said I would stick with single entry and 3 maxes in NBA. Yeah, I think those are a lot easier to manage as well, especially if, you're not somebody who wants to constantly be late swapping and managing your portfolio throughout the night. Let's see what else here. Neil said, yeah, I should think about it. I've always liked playing more lineups, but maybe it's worth considering for NBA. I think playing a handful of lineups in NBA will make it easier to manage throughout the night as well. Let's see what else we got here. Neil said, anyone else as excited for MLB opening day as I am? Only 66 days. I did not know it is that close. It will be coming up here on us quickly. Prior to that, for anybody who likes NASCAR, I believe NASCAR will be starting February 19th. If I'm not mistaken, we do have NASCAR sims. I dabbled in NASCAR for the first time last year, had a lot of fun with it. And I know the team is going to be, looking at the model for NASCAR, looking at the model for MLB, making any adjustments where they can. So should be a fun spring coming up here pretty soon. All right. Trevor said, is MLB a tough game though? Like NFL has a lot of dead money. Does MLB also? I would say that, I think MLB is a little tougher. The contest lobby, the contests tend to be smaller than NFL. I think for NFL, that is where the most casual money kind of flocks to. MLB is more of like a grinder sport, day in, day out, kind of similar to NBA. I think like on the DFS sport hierarchy, MLB has to rank like 4th or 5th, probably like NFL, PGA is making a big case to be like number 2. And MLB, I'm sorry, NFL, PGA, NBA, and then MMA was a fast growing sport, but with those late swap changes, don't know where it fits in, if it's above MLB or below. But MLB and MMA kind of make up that 4th, 5th kind of spot on the DFS hierarchy. So I would say that the most casual money is definitely in NFL. All right, Unkrabby Cabby said, hey Andrew, a few years ago there was a Twitch stream dedicated solely to lineup study. Was a great learning tool. Any thoughts to dedicating any office hours to lineup study? It's a good question on Krabby Cabby. Not something we have, discussed here internally. I think that, it would be a good idea if somebody were to do it, day in, day out for weeks, for months, for like an entire season. You could probably get something from that. I think it's pretty hard to do lineup study without kind of knowing some of like the thought processes or kind of what went into the creation of the lineups. I think that, you could draw conclusions from lineup study that the player who created the lineup might not even realize themselves, right? I've heard Nerdy Tenor talk on some of the interviews he's done where people say, I see a lot of your lineups do this. And he's like, really? Do they? And then he kind of goes back and is like, oh yeah, the model that I'm using, the machine learning model that I'm using, must have figured that out on its own. And not always the user is always aware of some of those dynamics, or like, oh, this guy always does that. Or like, no, that's kind of a result of something else that I'm doing that they don't really want to talk about. So I would say, lineup study has its pros, but just be a little careful drawing like hard and fast conclusions that a specific player is always doing this one thing when they do that. So right now, that's not what this show is dedicated towards, but definitely something like I could kind of take back to the team and see if that's some type of content that we want to work into our contest dynamic in the future. So I'm just going to make a note right here, lineup study content, and take that back to the team and see if that is something that we want to do. But good question there on Krabby Cabby. If you guys are looking for something like that and, those requests come in over and over again, that is just more of a reason for us to talk about it internally and decide if that is a direction that we want to go. Patrick said, I noticed that in regards to the min projection filter. Thank you for turning off the filter. One less thing to worry about. Let's see here. Just some conversation about MLB and NFL and dead money pretty much here. So definitely would read up on this if this conversation between Patrick, Neil, and Trevor, if that is something that you guys are interested about and have some thoughts here. But as far as DFS or SaberSim related questions, looks like that is all the questions that we have today. We will be right back here tomorrow for our Tuesday show, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you guys have questions throughout the day, throw them in the Office Hours channel over in the Discord. That'll get us a steady stream of questions to talk about leading up to the show and get us rolling here. But I think if we have any downtime, we'll probably continue to do our injury preview first look, kind of a fun thing to do in my opinion. But if anybody has any questions, throw them in the Office Hours channel. And until then, I will see you all tomorrow. Take care.